everybody. How are you? Today we are lucky to have Keith with us. Keith is joining us from UK. The topic today that we have is employee advocacy and why it is the hot new branding strategy. Why we are talking today to Keith is because Keith is a specialist in social media, employee advocacy, media relations, and corporate communication. He has been in this industry for last 20 years. Uh, and while we were having a conversation, he said that 20 years seems to be a long time. But my take is it is a journey. And social media, or maybe the employee advocacy part that we are going to talk about today, is all about the journey of an employer, how they feel about the company. Currently, he is heading UK social media and social business thing for Zurich Insurance Company. Again, this company currently has more than 35,000 people working in it. Keith, if it is the right number?
I think we're up to about 55,000 now
Okay,
globally, but
55.
yes, we're all over the world.
I think then the UK, the LinkedIn data which I got is not correct. So I need to improve my research in that part. So Keith is heading UK social media and social business for them. And over to Keith. Keith, if you can brief us a bit more about yourself.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me on the chat and for that nice introduction. Look, as you say, the journey thing is something that's a cliche that we hear all the time. But if I hark back to when I started in this industry, I was doing political and parliamentary affairs, and then I moved into the media relations world. And very much back then, I mean, back when I first started, social media wasn't a thing. So we only started to get social about 6 years after I started in the workplace. So and of course when Twitter started, I mean obviously Facebook before that, and then we've started to see all the platforms come, and some have already gone in that timeline. So yeah, it's an ever-changing world, and the journey that I've been on from moving around different firms to talking as a brand advocate, if you like, in media relations or government affairs roles has now shifted entirely to where I am now. So now, as you say, looking at social media as a thing within a large company. So you say Zurich, we're 55,000 people globally. In the UK, we've got about just under 5,000 people in the UK, employees wise. But we serve customers who are on the general insurance side, so personal lines, home and motor, or boats. If you have a yacht or something like that, we can insure that as well. But then we also insure the giant companies out there, people like General Motors and Airbnb and people like that. We do different things for different companies. So we do everything. We're such an enormous brand. One of the things we clearly have to do is to take our people with us on the journey of work. And that's very much the topic we're going to talk about today.
Great. Before we dive down in the topic that we have today, I have one question which I generally ask to all the speakers which come on board in the podcast. What was the tipping point or the place that you felt that this is my calling or this is what I want to do?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So if I go all the way back to school and talking about press and promotion and that kind of thing, the thing that tipped me there was getting involved in school musical productions at school. I'm a terrible singer, so I'm not very good. I don't perform on the stage, but I get involved behind the scenes. So actually figuring out how to promote the shows that we were doing at school really got me into PR, really, public relations. Okay. And then one of my teachers said, "Oh, you could actually do this as a career now," because that was new. It was new as a career route back then. So I did a university degree in public relations, and then kind of took it through there. But moving, I think 2007 was where life pivoted slightly into the social media world, which is where all these things will come together. When we started to see Twitter become a thing.
Yeah.
Whether it was becoming, we've had Facebook before that, and it was starting to build out. So I've been on Facebook since it started through university days. So my kind of uni career started at the same time. But then Twitter became a thing, and suddenly we realized that having our brand, so the Zurich channels where customers were, and this was a new way of talking to customers and talking to each other. When you add Facebook and Twitter into the same conversation, you suddenly realize that this was becoming a much bigger thing that was clearly had legs. So that was a real pivot point for me. And then as I've social media journey, that I think for me was when I left Zurich for a couple of years to do a different role. and then came back and realized that things hadn't actually changed while I'd been gone, and I was away for 2 years. And it struck me that in those 2 years, they'd had people looking at just our channels, so there's our our Twitter handles and our Facebook handles, but we'd never really taken our employees on that journey. And I'd read some things, and employee advocacy was becoming I don't think it's ever been a buzzword, but it was just the sorts of things that social media people would see on the side, as well as
Yeah.
SEO and pay-per-click and all that stuff that I don't do. Although those your listeners probably do, but I don't. And it was just one of those things, and I picked it up and realized that, hang on, this is really important. And for a firm like Zurich, and many of you out there, whether you're a small business or a large business, you've got some brilliant assets sitting under your roof that up to that point we hadn't used. So that was kind of the tipping point for me in that sort of direction.
Great. So, jumping to the topic that we have today, employee advocacy. So one thing is, if you can explain us what is employee advocacy. So a textbook definition and a definition that you understand. So always we used to have.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there is a textbook definition, but I think it's the principle of what we were just talking about, getting your employees to advocate for you. We've often talked about getting customer advocates, and that's brilliant, because if you treat a customer really well, they're going to tell their friends and their clients and their competitors and everyone else that you are the person to do business with. And it's the same for our workforce. We suddenly realized that if in 2007, 2008, as we were all individually building our Facebook profiles, we were starting to get into the workspace. So LinkedIn was becoming more of a platform, and we were getting Twitter as well. Then the balance shifted from corporate voices to people voices, and therefore your employees are there. And I saw a brilliant statistic or a workflow chart that showed you how much, if you added up all your social media channels from a brand perspective, who's listening, what's the number of people that you can hit. But then if you just take 10% of your workforce, the number of their own, and think about who's in those networks of your 4,000 people or your 30 people or your 10 people, that number is very, very quickly going to be much bigger than your brand voice.
True.
So the numbers just speak for themselves, and that's the principle. So how do we get companies like us to get our employees to talk about the thing that we're operating in? So from us, we're an insurance company. So we can perhaps talk about this later. I actually don't want our employees at Zurich to talk about insurance, because when you're selling a product, that for us, we get into a regulated space and it just becomes slightly tricky.
Yes.
But we still want them to, the company, the brand, the charity foundation that we have, all the things that make a company, we can still talk about that. And that's what I want people to do. But as well, to treat them as experts in the field that they operate in. So when I go to, we can't do it at the moment because of the situation, but when we used to go to a party and meet people for the first time, you would say, hi, I'm Keith, I'm a social media manager. You don't often say, hi, I'm Keith, I work for Zurich.
True.
You tell people what you do first, and then you might say where you do it. So that's the chunk. So get people to talk about what they do for a living. And if they do that and raise their game in that professional space, then the company name around the side will benefit off the back of it.
Okay.
Sorry, that was a very long answer to a very good question.
No, this is where we have long answers, because it's all about what you have to say rather than me. I have one doubt in this. Is this legal in a way? Because suppose we are paying somebody in a way, they are our employees, and then we tell them to post something or talk about the brand. So is it legal in first place? Because there are a lot of rules about privacy and telling people what to do. And then there are a lot of other company acts which are binding as a company. So is it legal in the first place?
So there are, I will answer that in a minute, but you just used a key word there, and that's the word tell.
Yeah.
We never tell our employees to do anything when it comes to social, because the moment they do, they are formally operating for you through the company, and they're doing it for the wrong reason. Why am I as an individual on social media? It's not to sell insurance for Zurich Insurance Company. It's the last thing I want to do. So we want to do it in a way that is compliant. It's more of a compliant thing. So is it legal? Yes, it is, certainly from a UK perspective. How they do it and what they do may or may not be legal depending on the product area, and that will be different in the UK for particular lines of insurance, and that will be different in the market that you're listening to. And that's, I'd always say to people, look, just be sure that you know that you are operating legally in your environment, your country, and your employer, because it will be different. So just for example, for us, we as an insurance company, our employees are not allowed to suggest that a customer buys a particular type of life insurance product. They have to, in order to buy a policy like that, you have to go through a broker or an independent financial advisor. It has to be intermediated, where you're getting financial advice which will lead to a particular product at a particular company. I am not allowed to sell. I'm not allowed to tell you right now that you need to go out and buy this product for your life insurance. I'm not legally allowed to do that. So, but I can say, you drive a car in a UK perspective, you are legally obliged. You have to have car insurance to drive a car on the road. So that's a legal requirement. So I can say to you very legally, you need to go and buy car insurance. Zurich's a car insurance provider. I can do that legally. That might be different to your listeners depending on where they are and what market they're in. So it's just being really clear about where you are and what you are legally obliged to do.
True. So I think it comes down to what kind of brand building or culture that you have in a company, where the employees which are working feel for the company in a way that they share things which are coming. So suppose a funding round is raised. I am talking in terms of startups. So a funding round is raised or something of that sort happens. The people working in that company usually share those information, that this is something which has happened, or some good news is there, they are raising money, or maybe a good client has given some testimonial and they intend to share those things. So that might be there. Other thing is employee advocacy relevant to a smaller company also? Because as Zurich is a very large company, so it has to go through the process of building a brand. So the employee advocacy can come into the awareness part, though they cannot come in the sales part, or they cannot come in the direct selling part, but they can always come in the awareness part, which you said that as a car owner, we can always say to somebody that you need a car insurance, and Zurich is a car company in that way. So that comes in the awareness part. But how can small companies also leverage this? If you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, it's the principles that we're talking about work for any size company. Whatever your listeners are doing for a living, whoever their agency is supplying, that's what they do. So we want people to realize that you're an expert in the agency management space, or you're in the platform space, or the CRM space, or you're a project manager, or you're an accountant. So if you're raising your profile, the profile of your colleagues in your company who are the experts as the accountancy, or the HR professionals, the people learning professions, then they can do that, and they can raise their profile by being the professional them. And just by virtue of doing that, and taking LinkedIn as a great example, as a platform, when Keith Lewis is on there talking about social media on LinkedIn, my company is underneath my name because it's in your headline. So your company follows you literally around the platform. So it's not about, I guess it's raising my expertise as the expert social media person within my world, or employee advocacy expert, but then the Zurich brand name will attach itself to it. So when people are thinking about experts in employee advocacy, I'd like them to think about Keith at Zurich, but really I want them to think about Keith because it's me. It just happens that I work for the firm, and that's the principle behind it. So it can work the same. So no matter what your agency is doing and what your clients are doing, the expertise that you bring to that conversation, that value add that you have, talks to the nature of your employer. So you go out talking about your employer, how good you are, you like to do it, the environment that we operate in as an employee of Zurich, from my perspective. That whole piece talks about what the company is like, not necessarily what we sell. And that's a really important part for us. It's how we do business in the UK, how we support employees, how we support our communities around it, our charity work. So we're just coming up to Christmas now. So we've got all our employees in the UK have got 3 days throughout the course of the year to do charity work as part of our jobs, which is fantastic. So we've been doing Christmas festivities for local charities around Smith, or people in Manchester or Birmingham, wherever my colleagues are. We've all been doing it in the last couple of weeks. And that's just it. If I'm sharing that, it's great to be involved in that activity. What that says about us as a company is fantastic. And that's the principle that I guess works no matter whether you're small, large, medium, whatever your company looks like.
Okay, great. So then the why part is solved now, that why should somebody do it. Now let us come to the how. And how are or how to motivate in the first place the employees to do this. So suppose there are CSR activities which your company is doing in a way that people take part in the 3 days program of Christmas that you are talking about, and then they post about it, or maybe they tell their friends that I spent 3 days of my work on these things. How should an agency in the first place motivate its employees to do this? That is one. And other is, what are the some very good platforms that you would suggest them to do that?
Okay, don't let me forget to come back to those. I'm just writing them down as well, because there's a step to do before you do that. For me, and that's about policy. Now I'm not a policy guy. I'm really not a governance type of person. But when it comes to social media, and this works for whatever company you're in, have a social media policy that is worded in a way that's encouraging. Now, from a Zurich perspective, when we first started, so you might expect a large insurance company to have a policy that was like 15 pages long. And as an employee, it felt like everything about this document was saying, don't do it.
True.
Just the principle behind it. The fact that it was a 15-page document that I had to plow through, everything just didn't quite feel right. So we completely rewrote it, and we turned it from 15 pages into 5, which includes the front cover and the back cover, and a page in there about our internal social platform Workplace. So really, our media policy globally is on 1 page, probably 2 if I'm being generous, and that sets out really clearly both the tone of how we do it, but also some of the legislative things that we have to do, how we speak for the firm, to be aware of all those things. The bit that says if you find something that you're not comfortable with, escalate it to the right UK perspective, because then I will deal with it. It's about making sure you're protecting the IP, the stuff that you're finding. You can't just go and do a Google search for an image and use that as your own social media posts. Just that sort of governance bit. So the first thing we have to do is to make sure that you've got a social media policy. Now, I'm more than happy to share ours with you, and you can share it with your people. There are, if you do a search for social media policies, I'm sure you'll find a good one that you may even have one that you can share to the listeners. But have that to start with, because that sets the tone and the scene for encouraging people to be social. We've got it written into our global code of conduct that we encourage our employees to be active on social if they choose to. Now, that's not you wouldn't expect that to happen. And that's over and above the social media policy. That's in our global code of conduct. So we've got that in place now. So that's the first thing. So how do we then build it? And how do you make it happen? Again, I use the word make there. You have to encourage people to do it. And so fully understanding that some people will choose not to, and that's fine. Some people will opt out because they want to have clear lines between their work and their home life. Now, for you and I suspect those clear cut, I go to work, I go home. That's not life how we operate now. It just doesn't happen. And to some extent, that's really good. But to some extent, some people will say, I like going to work. I like coming home. I need that line. So that's fine. So that will just to do that. And I think that the next piece to look at the how would be, what sort of content, how can you help as a company to help your employees? Now, is it having somebody like me around to literally train people? So to show, if I want to be on Twitter or LinkedIn, how do I build a profile? How do I create a good profile to start with? And then the next bit is content. So as a company, what sort of content can you give to your employees to share onto their network? So we're putting ourselves just before the employee, we're helping the employee to do something off the back. So what is it that we can give to our employees to help them to share easily? And how you do that will depend on how big you are, whether you have a budget and a resource, whether you have a marketing department. So I'm guessing some smaller companies just won't do that. It's just you're operating on your own with a friend, with a colleague. You might be in a very small agency.
Yeah.
So you might just do it organically. You don't need a platform or a process. So obviously, as you get bigger, then that's where we get into platform territory. So to think about what sort of content you can give and how you do it. So whether it might just be a Monday morning or a Sunday afternoon meeting that says, look, this week, as a business, we're doing this. What do we think we could talk about? And then we come up with 3 pieces of content that might be yours as your company, but it might also be stuff that's conversational around the business that you're operating in. So as a business development manager, there'll be something in that space that there'll be something to talk about going on. So talk about that. That doesn't have to be all the time about the company or the products they sell. You need to have a variety of things for people to do, because you will become very boring on social media if all you're doing is spouting forth and just promoting the products of your company. People will just switch off because it's not authentic. You wouldn't do it anywhere else unless you're in sales. So you kind of have to find things that work around your business and around your expertise without it necessarily being about you.
Great. Next, the question that I had to come again for you was, which platforms are good?
Oh, platforms, yes, of course. I knew I'd forget. So I'm going to tell, it's actually easier for me to answer that at the moment because we're using a platform globally from LinkedIn called LinkedIn Elevate. They're actually about to close it down. So there's no point you going out to your listeners, and we're recording this in December 2020. So they are about to close it down. So if you're listening in the future and you're looking, what is this? It probably doesn't exist anymore. But what LinkedIn are doing, they're bringing it into the platform under the My Company page. So the importance of having a company page will become really important. And there's lots of advice out there saying nobody reads company pages on LinkedIn. They're not important. They're dead spaces. That might be true, but they're about to become really, really important, particularly as you get into larger territories. So they're moving at, so Elevate for us is a platform where it allows us as social media people, as marketers within Zurich, to put all our content into this platform. We can choose what goes in there. We can write some words that you as an employee would then share to your networks. We can put them into content buckets that say, well, you're interested. We've got a commercial insurance one. We've got a Zurich people bucket. We've got a retail bucket. We've got a, I don't know, IT and tech bucket. So all these platforms do a similar sort of thing. So if it's in there, it's legal. Going back to one of your early questions, it's been through a compliance process and it's been signed off. It's in the public domain, which is great. So people have employees have the reassurance that it's safe content. I don't have to worry about what it is. It's pre-approved. So flipping that to what that looks like as an employee. So I've got an Elevate app on my phone and it's part of my LinkedIn options. And I go into this, I can see the buckets. I can then see the individual pieces of content within the bucket. If I see one that I like the look of and think that would work for my network, I just press share. It's got the words written already.
Yeah.
I can change it. I can add to it if I want to. I can say, so here, this is a great piece of content. You'd like this. So you get that notification and then I press share and then it goes. Okay. It looks to all intents and purposes to their network that they've posted it as if they've just gone onto LinkedIn, typed their own words with a link or a story, and then it goes to their network. So it doesn't look, you wouldn't know as somebody in my network whether I've posted it or whether it's come from Elevate. So there are so the principles of employee advocacy platforms are pretty much that. It allows people like me to put content into it as a company, and that allows you as an employee to share it to the networks that you choose. So there are a number of other platforms out there that I know of. There may be others that have come up while I've not been looking over the last couple of months, but there are platforms like Post Beyond, Dynamic Signal, Smart. There's one that involves Octopus that I've forgotten. There's a number of different ones out there. So if you do a search for employee advocacy tools, I'm sure you can come up with a whole range of things. and they are working to figure out how to do that best for larger organizations. Now, I would probably say for your listeners who are in the smaller end that you probably don't need a platform like that. You could very easily run it on a Google document or a spreadsheet or a whatever that might look like for you. You could even run it if you have a
Slack channel or maybe something of that sort.
You can select anything. Yeah, you could select I don't know, if you use an internal platform, you might, if you use Slack or Workplace as a Facebook product, then any sorts of things, you might have a group there where you put links and content in and let them just copy and paste and stuff. It's a little bit more clunky, but it would still have the same effect.
True. So that is one more thing, which is there. If a team is small, it will always be easy for them to use a smaller Facebook group or something of that sort. It will be helpful for them. So in the initial days, whenever a team is of 2 people, 3 people, they mostly talk on WhatsApp. And after it gets big, then they move on to some other platform because they have to do a lot of other work, and then they create channels and those things. Again, one part is clear that it is necessary, and moving forward, I think all the statistics and the social commerce thing which is coming up is pushing us to do these kind of things, where if for maybe not being just in the insurance space, but in a lot of other spaces, it is important as an employee or as a company owner to talk about it. Do you feel somewhere, because it is a general trend which is going on, suppose Elon Musk is there, so or Gary Vee, in a way, they these guys have their individual brands in a for them, and a lot of founders in the first place of agencies or small founders who are running maybe some firms which are specific to niche, so maybe they are into UI UX only, or maybe graphic designing only. Do you feel that each individual, the founder or somebody of that sort, will have to create their own brand in the running coming days? Because a lot of people are now getting active on LinkedIn. So suppose you are into content space, you continuously write a lot of content on LinkedIn, and that is how you generate more leads. So do you feel that future is about all this? Because the normal sales part which was there is becoming costly day by day. Google ads are becoming costly, Facebook ads are becoming costly, your lead generation program wherever you run is going to go up day by day. So is there a possibility that people might have to switch on this part?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Actually, it feels a bit strange, doesn't it, to saying, look, I want to encourage 4,500 people to, from a UK, from my 4,500 people to improve their personal brand. That is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get them to raise their own profiles, which in theory should make them better employees of your organization. It should make them better professionals, the professional thing that they do, which therefore means that they do better business for you. But there is an acceptance as part of that whole conversation that as they increase their own profile, that they might end up being picked off and asked to go and work somewhere else. And that there is, you can't get away from the fact that that's a risk. I always say to our HR people, look, that becomes a management and a talent issue. It's not a social media problem. It's our job to keep hold of great people because they're doing great business for us. If they need to go somewhere else to do something else, then that's kind of your job to persuade them to stay or give them the opportunity that they need, having got the experience that they've got. So yeah, I think they do that. And the other reason to consider this is because of the technology that we've now got makes it easy to turn off brands. So I saw a report earlier this year about the percentage of people that use ad blockers. From a UK perspective, I think it's about 42% of people in the UK have ad blockers running on their system.
True.
Hang on a sec. Our marketing department are spending millions of pounds a year on creating ads to get to you on the platform, and your 42% of people are never going to see it because they've got an ad blocker. But they might be connected to me and 3 of my colleagues, and so they're going to see it in a different way. So yeah, there's both technological reasons and principal reasons that kind of just support the whole reason why employee advocacy is something we can't ignore, and we should take advantage of it. It's a real opportunity.
Great. That is, I think, one part where people find it difficult as a small agency to create content. And again, so suppose talking about us also, we are starting this podcast series, which is there, and there are a lot of people who are going to join us in the pursuit that we have. Uh, One part is they don't have the resources to create content. Other is sometimes they are too busy doing whatever they are doing, so people just want to go home at 5 or 6, whichever
Yeah.
time it is there, and they just don't want to talk about anything else. In that cases, is there a way out for people rather than hiring somebody who is responsible for this position, or maybe do some get together and tell people that these are the ways of doing it? Is there a possibility of finding a way out of this situation, chicken and egg problem?
Yeah, it's very much chicken and egg problem, isn't it? I think it's about finding your why for being on social. If you're using your social media platforms to drive business, this is a fundamental part of why we exist and do the jobs that we do. So it needs to become part of it. And sometimes you have to kind of invest a little bit of time up front to then develop the ROI case for investing your time or somebody else's time to do that. Um, yeah, the issue of time is a challenge that I always get from colleagues. Well, I ask people all the time. It's one of my starting slides whenever I'm doing a presentation, is that says what's stopping you. So, and it's always time, content, regulation, permission.
Yeah.
Those are the three big reasons that we've got. So, to go back to policy, permission, we've sorted that out because they know that they can. So, park that one. Time and content are the big challenges. Now, actually, when you get to a platform perspective, so from us, so from Elevate perspective, I can do 15 minutes on Elevate, and you can schedule content to go out over the next week. So in 15 minutes, I can do my LinkedIn activity for a week. But then that involves having a platform to do it.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to content, people do still overthink it, and it's really easy to say than it is to do. So I think if you're looking to if time is a real factor, you can be just as effective on social media by engaging in conversation, not necessarily starting conversation and posting your own content. It would be good if you were proactively sharing posts as well, but that doesn't have to be an all singing, all dancing podcast that involves spending an hour's worth of time 6 times a month to do it, and then the editing and then the promotion that goes behind
Yes.
it. It could just be, I've read an article on Forbes.com or India Today, whatever the newspaper article might be, that's relevant to your expertise or your business. Share that with your 2 sentences that says what you're thinking about it, and try and drive a conversation. So it doesn't, we could overthink content too much because it is time consuming, and you've got to invest in it to then get the delivery off the back of it. So curate it. Don't create it, curate it. So see what works. You're already reading stuff. Every expert out there listening to this will have read something that's relevant to their profession or their job or just general news. So you're already receiving content from somewhere. Just share the links, share the post. I read this story this morning and I thought this, or here's an article you should read this. What do you think about this subject? Or this line in this piece, really good. It's a 1-minute job. You've already read it
True.
somewhere else. You've got it on your smartphone, probably.
Yeah.
They've all got those little share buttons.
Share buttons.
Share it to LinkedIn, share it to Twitter, share it to Facebook, share it to Instagram, whatever it might be, and ask a question, because that will start to get you going. And if you're doing that, you should get engagement back. You should then be able to feel that it's making a difference to the business that you do, or you as a professional. And if it's not, stop doing it. If it's not solving your why for being there, then you're doing it wrong, or you need to shift your why. We've heard that a lot. I'm sure you'll be familiar with Simon Sinek and the TEDx about what's your why. It's really, really important, because your why will drive what you're doing and what platform you're doing it on. So if your why is to get the next job at the next agency, what you're doing should hark back to that endpoint, because you can prove it. If you want that job at that agency, that's your metric. If it's about getting more leads, do the thing that will get you more leads, and you've either got the leads, there's your metric, or you haven't, so you're not doing this. The bit in the middle is not right. So really think about why you're doing what you're doing and where you're doing it, and is it having a proven effect. If you can't draw the link, then you need to shift what you're doing.
Great. Uh, I think we're coming to the end of the podcast, Keith. And usually we have two questions for everybody who is joining us. One is, what do you do to keep learning new things? Because the field that we are in, digital marketing, and so mainly social media marketing, every time, every 6 months, the algorithms change on Facebook, or there is a new platform that you have to learn again, and then again teach people that this is how you use this platform in a way. Or suppose Google Plus comes up and then it dies. TikTok is now banned in India. TikTok was about to get banned in US also.
Mhm.
So how do you make sure that you are updated with everything which is coming up, or what are the things that you read in the first place?
Yeah, so I've actually found it in recent times. There've been some really good social media groups on Facebook, which weren't there before, that have become one of my go-to news feeds, from a social media perspective, because things change so much. I mean, you just mentioned a few things there already. By the time this goes out, something else will have changed,
Yes.
something will have come in, and I find that. So in that perspective, those groups of your professional space are really important, no matter what sector you're in. Find those groups, whether it is a LinkedIn group, whether it is a Facebook group, whatever what's even WhatsApp groups now. I'm on a really good WhatsApp group about voice technology that somebody's set up,
Okay.
which is a new learning for me. It's something I didn't really know anything about, and I'm still learning about. So I use that little community wherever it is. I mean, but I my go-to platform for learning stuff is LinkedIn, for most of the stuff, because it's wider. My network's quite wide, so I'm always picking up something about the business, the Zurich business, the
Okay.
insurance business, the just general news or update, what's going on in the social media space. I can generally find it on LinkedIn. So I tend to start there and then sort of look at the other different bits and pieces. But I think the crucial thing is you have to get your head up and look out. Whatever you say you do for a living, you've got to find that thing that keeps you on top of your game. Because there is nothing worse than you walking into a client meeting this afternoon or tomorrow, and they know it and you don't.
Very true.
It's the key thing. You just need to be on top of your game. So find the place where it will help you to do that, because that will make you the better version of you.
I think being on top of the game is something which is very important in the field that we are in, because things change so fast that it is impossible for somebody to, if he does not read or be updated, then it's just a 3 month game for him. He would be outdated in 3 months. One
So
advice that Keith you will have for our listeners, in a space that pushed you, uh, so something that you always have in back of your mind. So I keep on talking about, for me it is always, hard work beats talent when talent does not work hard. That is something that is always on back of my mind most of the times. uh, what is something that is on back of your mind always, and that keeps you pushing? Because there is a downfall always whenever we are doing things. If you are running campaigns don't work, or if you're doing something, we tend to fail a lot of times. So what is something that keeps you pushing and brings you back?
yeah, I mean, there's one that jumps to me is, for me, it's make a difference. What are we doing? If we're not making a difference, whether it's to our people or my team or the organization or our communities, then we're not doing it right. So it comes back to that. Have we made a difference today? Have we solved someone's problem? Have we connected with people? And I thought you were going to ask me a slightly different question when that started. So I've got a different answer
Yeah.
about advice for people, and is about network. To keep you on top of your game and to keep you fresh, work your network in your organization, or in your sector community. It's really important that I know I said before that we need to look up and look out, but
True.
keep an eye on what's going left and right and what's around you as well, because it's really important that you keep in touch with people. You build a network, you build a voice, you become, it's a phrase that I use, a brighter brick in your world. You see the brick behind me. An
Oh,
analogy that I like to think there. Um, how are you becoming as bright a brick as you can be within your network, whatever that looks like? So creating that, keeping in touch with people, because you just never know who over here in your network could really be the person who you don't really keep in touch with, but could be the answer to your problem, whatever that problem
True.
might be. For me, as a real life example of that, I said at the start that I left Zurich for 2 years to go and work for another organization. Unfortunately, there was a restructure and I got made redundant in that role. But because I'd stayed in touch with my old boss at Zurich, I asked a question. I made a statement, and she contacted me to say, in fact, your old job is still here. It's just become vacant again. Would you like to come back? So just keeping in touch with your network, being visible in your network. You don't know who's in it or who might see things around the side, and it just might help you out when you least expect it. So it's really crucial that people create and build a network, that they're keeping on top of their game, and they're looking to be as bright a brick as they can be in their corporate wall.
Becoming a brighter brick is what is my takeaway from this talk today. A new thing which I learned. Thanks a lot, Keith, for joining us today. It was great having you. Thank you for coming. Thanks a lot.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.